Hello and welcome to Make It Happen with Will Polston. I'm Will Polston. This is episode number 125, and in this episode I'm joined by Paula Ruane. Since 2007, Paula has worked with individuals and teams from giant corporations to sole traders with one shared aim: helping them increase their capacity to prepare for, recover from, and adapt in the face of stress, challenge, or adversity. This is being in the zonal flow, in balance and in control, feeling happy, healthy, and able to face what is around the next corner. Today's world is chaotic, challenging, complex, and often confusing. Paula has developed her unique stress prevention program, which uses cutting-edge technology to bring change through self-regulation for both sides of the human experience simultaneously, the body and the mind. In this episode, Paula and I are going to be talking about changing how you manage stress forever. So Paula, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Will. Great to be here.
So you deal in a very important area. And I think it's an area that every single person that's listening to this episode has experience in some way or another in their life, and for some people it's more so than others: stress. And the title of the show is changing how you manage stress forever, which is quite a bold claim, isn't it? You know,
it is,
particularly in today's world. But we're really going to go into that, and we're going to be sharing some of the tips and the tools and the strategies and some of the cutting edge technologies that you use with your clients to enable them to identify and deal with stress, which I've already used myself, and I think are incredibly interesting. But let's just start with, what is stress?
Well, it's depending on the person and their situation. It varies from person to person. So the general term is when demands exceed resources. So it could be financial stress because there's not enough money. It could be health stress because they just have no more stamina, nothing else to give. They're running on empty. It could be emotional stress. Bob Geldof talked about compassion fatigue. So it varies from person to person. I do think it's misused today, by the way. I think people say, oh, I'm so stressed at the moment. Actually, what they mean is there's a lot of aggravation, a lot of irritations. But I think we're all up against it one way or another, and all experience it in different ways.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And one of the things that was quite eye-opening for me years ago was, like, I believe that many things in life are on a spectrum. You know, you've got happy and sad at one end of the spectrum, you've got positive, negative, you've got good, you've got bad, but stress is a spectrum as well, because at one end of the spectrum, you've got distress, and at the other end of the spectrum, you've got eustress, haven't you? You know, so and for people that aren't aware, eustress is like an optimal level of stress. The sort of, if you play sport, for example, it's like, you if you're going into a big game, you have a certain level of stress that enables you to perform at, so I call it peak performance stress. You know, it enables you to perform at a high level because you're more alert, you're more switched on. Whereas if you just rolled out of bed, if you were to try and go and play that game, you wouldn't be performing. So okay, I love that definition of when how do you say it?
When demands exceed resources.
Yeah, I love that. And I can definitely see how that is very applicable, like when you're getting stressed because you're running out of time, when you're due to be somewhere and you're not there, and you don't have the resources to be able to get there, and whatever else. It's very, very true, for sure. So let's one of the things that I think is really interesting, for me at least, maybe for the listeners, but I certainly find it interesting, is why people do what they do. And I know that you've got a particularly personal reason why this is such an important passion and mission, and something that you do with so much energy and enthusiasm. What is that?
Yes, so it started when my husband, when he was 35, had an emergency heart bypass. So that's very young. And in those days, it was open heart surgery. And, it was a 6-hour operation. I had 3 children under 5, had a thriving interior design business. And the reason I do it is twofold. First of all, now we know it can be prevented. That's the first thing. And secondly, because of that, our whole lives changed in every single way. So he had been a very, very easygoing, really great bloke. Everyone loved him. And he gave up smoking and drinking. And 2 years later, he had this emergency heart bypass. And during that 2 years, he went from being this great, easygoing, really nice man to an absolute bad-tempered, I mean, we were walking on eggshells half the time because he was so, what we say, hot to trot, so ready to be triggered and have a shout or a rant or storm off. And that was so fascinating for me as an observer to see how one person could switch. And that, of course, is what stress does to us. It brings out the other side of us that's not necessarily the best person we can and want to be. And then on top of that, so that interested me. One of my children was diagnosed with chronic myeloid leukemia. She was only 22 at university. And to cut a long story short, when she started on the road to recovery, if she was going through a very stressful period, she started working for someone who was actually overworked her 14 to 16 hours days. Her leukemic rate would go up. Then when she had time off and she could recuperate, her leukemic rate went down. And this was monitored by the Hammersmith Hospital. So this wasn't my perception, this was actual fact. So that is my really powering motivation, prevention, and to stop people from having their lives changed if possible. It's like insurance, though. No one wants to have insurance. No one wants to do preventative stuff. But then, of course, when you do have something stolen or you do suddenly fall in, that's when you can't turn the clock back.
Yeah, well, hey, it's interesting you say that no one wants to do it. I think we're going through a big shift right now, and I, for years, for as long as I can remember, I've modeled people that are doing great things. And one of the people that I follow is a guy called Peter Diamandis, who's a tech billionaire, and one of his big things for the future is preventative healthcare, and we're already starting to see that switch. If you've got private medical cover, like just recently I went to a spa weekend that was subsidized by my insurance company, which I have the ability to do 3 times a year with 75% off, because they know that if I'm going and relaxing and going to spas, the reason that I can get a free pair of premium trainers, the reason I can get discounts to gym memberships, is that what that's really doing is it's saving their payout premiums and it's reducing my premium, or saving their payouts for massive big health bet. Because in my opinion, I benefited from the NHS like many people have, but it's not the National Health Service, it's the National Sick Service, right? We go there when we're sick. And the key is being able to make that shift to being able to like you say, to prevent. And in order to prevent, we just need to be mindful of what we're doing. And it's not quite as simple as just exercising and eating a bit better. There's other components to that, particularly in today's world. And like you said, when it comes to stress being ultimately when I'm going to have to write it down because I'm going to bring this up lots of just when the demand
exceeds resources.
Yeah, demand exceeds resources. Yeah, I'm going to bring that up a lot this weekend. Is very, very, very important. But what I think is really interesting when it comes to stress is that you've said there that your husband had this 35 years old, had this particular thing. Your daughter's condition. Now, what was interesting with your daughter's condition is that it was very rare for her to get it as a 20-year-old girl, particularly because it's more common in 40 to 60-year-old men, which would give an indication of stress being an impact. One of my dear friends is a vet, Rose, who wrote a phenomenal book called Metaphysical Anatomy. And she basically brings back I think there's 700 examples of illnesses and diseases and ailments that, if we break it back, the root cause is stress at some level. You take the word disease, break it down, dis-ease. We're not at ease, and as a result, we get the disease, and that's where it can come in. Do you agree with that as well?
I certainly do. I would also say with my daughter, by the way, I've always cooked everything myself. I've never used packet food or anything off the shelves. I've always been a real supporter of organic food, and so on. So she had a very, very sound digestive tract, if you like, which is so important for your immune system. They didn't have vaccinations, and she was given a TB jab when she was 12, not with my permission. And it didn't actually settle for about 13 months. And that's when her immune system started to go down. Now, I do believe, you're right, there are times in her life up until she was 22 where she could possibly have avoided it, but she was stressed in various ways. You're absolutely right. And I think that exacerbated, I think the two things together. I'll never be able to prove it, of course. But you're right, stress is at the key. Dr. Bruce Lipton, if you know of him.
Yeah, I do indeed.
One of my heroes. He said the 3 T's cause illness: toxins, trauma, and thought. But the biggest one is thought, the stressful thoughts we have and the feelings that go with them. So you're absolutely right. And I do hope people will be more proactive and do more. But the statistics show that 74% of people are chronically stressed. That means day in, day out, overloaded. But 50% say they won't talk about it to anyone. And this is the 50% we need to somehow educate them to know that today's stress is not a mental illness. It's a symptom of how we work and live.
Yeah, and it's very true. So I know a big part of your work is helping people prepare, and it's helping people recover. Now, I'm going to do this the other way around. I'm going to go to preparation last. The reason being is that there'll be a lot of people that are listening to this right now that are already stressed, and they're getting symptoms in lots of different ways. We have that horrible head feeling, when you're stressed, your neck tensing, and obviously cortisol gets pumped into the body, and adrenaline, all those things. So let's start with recovering. So if people are experiencing stress significantly, they already know they're stressed right now, what are some practical things that they can look at doing that maybe are... So 2 things. One are maybe the more obvious things that people are probably aware of. Maybe it's common sense, but not common practice. And then some things that are maybe a little bit more bespoke to the type of work that you do that you found being really helpful.
Okay. So although we're going to talk about recovery, in fact, preparation is key. Start with the end in mind. And it's sharpening the saw. But in recovery itself, so I teach Heart Math program, which is a licensed program. These are specific exercises to help people bring in the rest, digest, relax type of part of our nervous system. So when we're triggered and when we're stressed, that's the fight, flight, freeze bit. And we want to bring on the other part, which damps that down. So in recovery, you need to do things that make you feel good. That's all you have to think about. So things like going for a walk, things like not having any phones in the bedroom or any blue screens and turning them off for at least an hour before. These are practical things that people can read about everywhere, but they don't have the time to read. And then they just go from one crisis to the next. And it's about time, silence, time for reflection. These are the areas that are missing from today's world, because it's just one thing sorting or dovetailing into another. So in practical terms for recovery, I would suggest to anyone listening, they take a piece of paper and a pen or a pencil, and they write down me time. And they look at their diary and they see where they can put in 2 to 3 minutes break throughout the day, where they then decide what they're going to do with that. Are they going to go for a walk? Are they going to start having a bath at night instead of a shower in the morning? Because that is relaxing. How much sleep do they get? I know this is all, it doesn't seem very tangible. It's not one specific thing, but stress isn't one specific thing. It's inflammation of the gut. It's mental overload, brain fog, panic, nausea, aches and pains. Stress is our whole system. So as soon as you can start to soothe and comfort your system, that's when you start to make a change. And it requires dedication. It's too easy to be sucked in, have our boundaries overruled, learning to say no. You know, these are things. So the few key points: make sure you get 8 hours sleep a night, go to bed earlier, get up earlier and go for an early morning walk. You know, it's getting light at 5:30 now. There's no excuse to not go for a walk. If you have an early start, get off a tube stop earlier or a bus stop earlier, or park further away from the station, fit in walking that way. Don't use the stairs, don't use the escalator, use stairs. Little things you can start building in, more natural processes into your daily life. Drink more water, make some time for silence. Just go for a walk without any gadgets or gizmos. You know, go on your own. One of my exercises I gave to a client who's online practically 24/7 was to count how many different flowers he sees coming out at the moment on his walk. I mean, it's such a silly little thing, but it's connecting you back to our natural environment. And that's really this huge chasm between how we're meant to be and live and act to this artificial online virtual world that just occupies most of our waking moments.
It's really interesting because, like you say, a lot of the things they're quite common sense. I've made a list of a few of the ones just to recap. Like you said, blue light. I mean, I personally, in today's world, find it very difficult to just down tools before I go to bed. I'm quite fortunate. I don't have sleep challenges, so I can literally go to sleep and wake up the next morning. But I did invest in a couple of pairs of these, which aren't expensive. You know, you're talking 20-30 pounds. You can buy a pair of blue light blocking glasses, you know, that can be helpful. I'm a huge fan. One of the things that I've done, and for the people that are maybe a little bit more pragmatic here, I create, and you called it me time. I create what I call a self-love list. You know, a lot of people think I don't want to love myself because that's arrogant, and that's good, but it's about being loving to yourself. And I break it down in two ways. I have things I love doing by myself and things I love doing with others. And it only dawned on me not that long ago. So I actually used to, I don't now because I'm in the rhythm of things, but I had a list of them. I used to go through and tick how many I'd done each week, because what I would find is that weeks that I was particularly stressed or maybe feeling like I was running at 100 miles an hour, I hadn't been doing the things on my self-love list. And things for me, a lot of them you've mentioned: sleeping, walking. One of the things for those that don't follow me on social media, I'm pretty much obsessed with sunrises. So I love going out and seeing sunrises. If you follow me on social media, you'll know this. Most days I'm posting a sunrise or a sunset. And for me, those moments are that sort of moment with nature, because it's quite easy to forget that, isn't it? Sort of getting out there, the silence. I'm almost one of my non-negotiables, or minimum of 6 days a week, is just having 10 minutes of meditation when I first wake up to set me up for the day. I'm a huge fan of. So yeah, so those are the practical things that people can be doing. But like you say, heart math, I'm a huge fan of heart math. Been using heart math for years, about creating that head and heart connection. It's a fantastic tool. I recommend people get in contact with you if they want to find out more about heart math. Do you briefly just want to explain what heart math is?
Yes. So at the point where we see an email from a high maintenance client, or we hear an unexpected noise, something that distracts us, no matter what it is, we perceive that as a potential challenge or threat. And the key word is perceive, it's perception, it's not necessarily the case. So that creates a different rhythm within the heart. And the heart, this is something that I know you know, Will, but many people don't realize, is that the heart sends more messages to the brain than the other way around. And it does it via different rhythms that it beats. So your doctor won't necessarily identify these rhythms. This is really exclusive work of heart math, or started off with their research institute. So you create this this tom-tom rhythm saying, help, this could be a problem. And that triggers the fight, flight, freeze part of our brain. in turn, that takes energy and blood flow away from our clever bit. So it was okay when we were still Fred and Wilma Flintstone running around in the cave age world. We needed to be able to fight or run away or play dead. But of course, today we're paid for the frontal cortex, the clever thinking, sentient bit, the bit that we're all in now, Will, while we're talking. We are in this coherent state where we're feeling good. It's conversation we both love. You know, you've got your system sorted out. You feel very relaxed in it. You're doing something you enjoy. That it's easy to think rationally and coherently. But the minute something happens, it takes us away from this state and we're back in that fight, flight, freeze, you know, rushing around and so on. So that's the whole technique is based on preventing energy drain and keeping ourselves in a coherent, balanced brain heart stage so that our logic and our emotions match. So before we end, if there's time, I could actually talk people through the quick coherence technique, which is the key to regaining that balance before you do anything, say anything. This is what replaces those two terrible words, if only. If only I hadn't said that, if only I'd done this, or if only I'd remembered that. So, but this is the recovery. This is how you get yourself back into a coherent state. And also you prepare for something with the same technique. So it's a no-brainer, really.
Yeah, and I think something you just said there as well, and we're definitely going to go through that technique at the end, for sure. But something you said around the um the energy, you know, in terms of energy being dispersed when we are highly stressed. Obviously, as you've already mentioned, we're operating from a fight, flight, or freeze response. We're in our sympathetic nervous system. We're utilizing our sympathetic nervous system, and it's so easy to get triggered these days with all of the thing. One of my top tips, and guys, if you don't do this, do this, it will change your life. Is I just turned off all notifications. So I have my phone on silent. I don't have that bing, bing, bing going off all the time, which is a huge distraction. But also, I just turn off notifications. So if I get lots of WhatsApp messages and I get lots of emails, I have to go into the app. So I have to be proactive rather than reactive. It's on my time, not somebody else's time. Sure, I get phone calls come through, but even then, my phone's on silent. So if I miss it and I don't hear it or it doesn't fit, I don't feel it vibrate, then I'll pick it up at another time and it's on my time, which was a huge shift for me.
That's correct. Yeah, that's one of the best tips you can give, because our brain is only about 2% of body weight, but it uses up 20% of energy. And every time there's that ping, buzz, ring, ding, whatever it is, the blood rushes around in the brain, and it's a bit like spinning tops, you know, whirling around all over the place. And we forget things because we haven't had the time to store the memory and archive it properly. You know, it does all sorts of things, and this is not how our brain was designed to work. You know, it hasn't kept up with development. So it's a brilliant tip.
So as well as heart math, I know that another technology that you use, which I've had the pleasure of using with you, give me some feedback on it, is voice scanning software.
That's correct. Yes. So it's based on traditional Chinese medicine. That is the information and, if you like, wisdoms behind it. But it's actually brought up to date with a really sophisticated set of algorithms. So people just talk into the mic on their device or whatever it is for 10 seconds. And that in turn throws up some screens, which can show where stress is causing blocks to information getting through. So it could be mental alertness, it could be focus, concentration, it could be inflammation of the gut and digestive issues. It also highlights things like if blue screens are impacting and which EMFs, you know, which frequencies. Is it cell phones? Is it computer, radio waves? So it's very comprehensive, and it's all based on the resonance and sort of vibrational. And people are amazed, frankly, that 10 seconds can produce such information. But it's a bit like an orchestra playing a single note. A conductor with a very good ear for music will be able to pick out if an instrument is slightly off key, you know, even though it's this one note with all the instruments and all the sections. So it's the same for this. This can identify where somewhere needs a bit of support within a system. So it's a bit like you have your body, which is the hardware, the computer, and this is the master program that runs the information that makes everything work efficiently.
Yeah, and this is scientifically backed as well, isn't it?
Well, it's backed with the science of quantum physics.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that an allopathic centre would approve, although I did have a doctor as a client, and he was over the moon and said it should be brought into mainstream medicine. But one of our, we have got an ISO rating on the pain relieving part of part of this system. So it is recognized, but it's not mainstream science.
Right. Okay. Okay. So, so we've spoken about the recovery piece, but as you've rightly mentioned, preparation and preparing and putting yourself in a position so that you're not as stressed or getting as stressed. So what is it that people can do to prepare for the future and avoid it?
Okay, so apart from the lifestyle changes, and it depends on the person, of course. So if someone is really up against it, maybe going through personal challenges and finding work is overwhelming, I deal a lot with people who are going through prolonged periods of intense pressure and stress. So I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a talk therapist. I basically equip people to face adversity and challenge, to prepare, adapt during, and come through it better with less wear and tear. So I would always suggest that they use the quick coherence technique, which we will I'll do later, because that will get the nervous system out of the fight, flight, freeze, the sympathetic, to then bring in the parasympathetic. And the technique achieves a state of calm preparedness. So if you've got a challenging meeting or a difficult conversation to have, you don't want to fly off the handle, but you don't want to say nothing either. So this puts you in a place where you can be considered and you can respond rather than react.
Yeah, I talk a lot about what I call the formula to life, which is a very simple formula. E plus R equals O. Event add response equals outcome. And a reaction is very much sort of driven from the amygdala, and it's sort of from our reptilian brain, and more often than not, it's the thing that once we've acted on it, we think, oh God, I wish I'd done that differently, or I wish I'd said that differently. Yeah, if only, exactly, if only. And doing that. So okay, cool. Well, we're going to get into that technology in a moment. And look, we already know that the benefits of not being as stressed are that you're going to have new experience, new emotions. You know, people they get caught, don't they, in living in their favorite flavor of feeling. You know, if the person that's always angry is always angry, the person that's comfortable being sad is always sad. So it's being able to experience these different emotions, because we've got back to equilibrium. And I think one of the things that I'm a big believer in, as I know you are, is sort of adopting that Stoic philosophy, is that it's not what's happening, like you said, it's how you're reacting to it. You know, what happens is what happens, but the meaning that we choose to give to it and how we choose to respond to it, and whether we see it as a positive or a negative. One of my favorite examples of this is the Chinese have two brush strokes for the word two brush strokes for the word crisis. One means opportunity, the other means danger. And I think it's a very apt example of what we can choose to focus on in any given moment.
Yeah, you're right. And, you know, going back to emotions, angry and so on, these are all absolutely normal and natural, you know, and they're part of our emotional landscape. And we do have to visit them all every day, if possible, to give us that adaptability. The issue is when we settle in one area, we stay in one town called depression or regret or remorse or anger. That's when it becomes unhealthy. And you're absolutely right. It's recognizing it and preparing and working on ourselves. And, only us can do it, can't we? It would be great. I mean, the best pianist in the world made the most wrong notes. He had to do it himself. And it's the same with this. We have to work at exercising this emotional muscle. And my expression is, it's not what we know, it's how we feel about what we know that gets us going. And, working with someone like you on mindset is key, because very often people don't know which direction to go in. And so I help with the control of the mind to then hand them over to people who can maybe guide them on a route and a path they need to go on.
Very, very true indeed. If there was one, and I know this is difficult, right? I know this is difficult for you, but if there was just one thing that someone was to implement this week to have an impact on their responses to stress and how they feel about stress, what would the one thing be? Because I know we spoke about blue light blocking, turning things off, sleeping, walking, nature, breathing science, silence, drinking more water, doing heart math, using voice scans. But if there was one thing that in your opinion is the thing to do,
okay,
what would it be?
I would say for them to think of a time when they felt wonderful, which was maybe a big celebration. It needs a bit of thought, because if it's people, there are two sides of the people. It's like the crisis, opportunity and danger. There could be wonderful memories, but there might also be the reminder of an argument or whatever. So something that makes them feel wonderful, and then just have that image on their phone as a photograph to look at, and to then really bring in that feeling, because immediately you're bringing back the parasympathetic immediately. That's the first thing you can do, and you can use it with quick coherence as well. I'm going to, when we go through that, the power of that, don't underestimate the power of feeling good. And we only need to feel good for a few times compared to when we're feeling stressed. It doesn't have to be much at all. The power of it, bringing in those supporting chemicals. You mentioned cortisol. Well, that stays in our body, and that's what makes us ill, generally speaking, or contributes and makes us ache and so on. So by thinking of good things, you're bringing in something called DHEA, which is the vitality hormone, and oxytocin, which is the heart protector. Number one disease in the UK is heart disease, heart attack. So if you're protecting your heart, and what is your heart? It's the center of your emotions. And what does the heart do? It sends more messages up to the brain than the other way around. And Bruce Lipton says thoughts are one of the biggest causes of ill health. So having good, warm feelings, telling the brain what to do, just with an image, a photograph of something very special.
I don't normally do this, but I'm gonna do it on this occasion. There's a particular YouTube video that I have called "How to Feel Good Emotionally," which is actually an intervention. It's about 15 minutes, and if you go onto if you search Will Polston in YouTube and then go to the playlist meditations under that, it's called "How to Feel Good Emotionally," or just type Will Polston "How to Feel Good Emotionally." And guys, go and do that intervention, and you can experience. Because I go through a whole series of questions that get people to draw on that memory, and on multiple memories. I do a stack that they work through. I think as a tool based on what Paul has just said that you can go away and use. I think you'll find it really beneficial, guys. So go and do that. So we've teased people with the quick coherence technique. I know there's some people that are going to be going, "Oh, just give us the technique. I want the technique." What is it?
Okay, so I'm going to invite you to do it. Shall I do that?
Absolutely, yeah,
okay.
Of course.
So I would like to ask everyone who's tuned into this to just make themselves feel comfortable. So you don't have to, this is not relaxation, by the way. And the other thing is, it's not like meditation where you have to take yourself away, or mindfulness where you become detached. This is about being in the now, in the moment, focused and alert. The sort of state you want your aircraft pilot to be, or your paramedic, not hyper alert and all over the place, and not so relaxed that they, really don't know what they're doing. So this is about a state of balanced preparedness. So I'd just like to invite you to this is just to help you anchor the feelings and the emotions of what we're going to do. So I'd just like to invite you to place one hand on your chest.
Yeah.
And just put it there, and then just start to slow the breath a little, and imagine that you can draw this breath in through your fingers into the center of your chest, into your heart, and then release it. So you've got your eyes open, and just for this demonstration, you actually have your hand on your chest over your heart. And you're just slowing the breath a little, and breathing in and out through the nose. That will help slow it. And then just feel your body becoming softly comfortable. Maybe a feeling of inner ease. If you find this hard, don't worry. It's something we're not used to today. So just remember the breath, maybe counting to 5, taking it in and out of the hand into the heart. You're doing really well. Just slow the breath a little. Don't overbreathe. It's not yogic breathing. This stage is called heart-focused breathing. The clue is in the name. And this is putting you into a neutral place. And now we're going to go into quick coherence, which will start to put your prefrontal cortex, the clever bit, back online. So still breathing through the heart, a bit slower, a bit fuller. Just get back into that rhythm. Think of someone, somewhere, something with appreciation, and bring that into the heart with your breath. Could be feeling the sun on your face. Could be hearing the birds in the morning. Could be someone you're fond of. Just appreciation for the knowledge you have that in your life. And bring this appreciation into your heart with the breath. Just let the body settle. Maybe look at something out of the window while you bring to mind this renewing emotion. And now very calmly, just bring your focus back to the here and now. Check in. Do you feel any different? If you don't, that's absolutely normal. With a bit of practice, you'll start to feel a change. Maybe your neck feels a bit looser, your shoulders maybe dropped a little. Maybe you felt some warmth around the chest. Maybe you feel a little calmer. So quick coherence technique is before a difficult conversation, maybe during and afterwards to rebalance, to get back into that zonal flow. First thing in the morning before you get out of bed, last thing at night. If you're not like Will and you do find sleep difficult, this is fantastic for calming the fast beating heart, which is very often what wakes people up or stops them from having good sleep. You wake up in the middle of the night, practice it. So the first step is heart-focused breathing. And I suggest that as you breathe anyway, you breathe like that. So you can do this while you're waiting for the kettle to boil, you're cleaning your teeth, you're checking emails, you're waiting for someone to answer the phone. Heart focused breathing, you're breathing anyway, so it's just a bit deeper, the breath into the heart. And then bring in these renewing emotions of care and appreciation to put you in that place where you are ready, considered, and you have a better response for better outcomes.
Very good. Well, I certainly feel calmer. I think it's a great exercise. And if you were driving or you're out walking or running when you're listening to this, definitely go back and do the exercise. You'll be glad that you did. So thank you very much, Paula.
Pleasure.
Well, look, I've really enjoyed this episode, and there's been plenty of things that we've gone through that I know people will have found beneficial and that they can go and apply. And that really is the key now. You know, changing how you manage stress forever doesn't happen just from having some new information. It's about applying that and starting small, like we've just said, even if it's just utilizing the quick coherence technique, or like you said, sort of having the image and bringing those great emotions in are really, really going to help. But it will make a difference to people's life. And as you kind of have had a couple of very close calls with family members, can literally save your life from as a result of doing this. So Paula, thank you very much.
My great pleasure, Will. It's lovely to be here. Thank you.
So if people want to connect with you, they want to find out more, they're interested in learning about you and what you do, where can they do that?
Okay, so if they email me, paula@paularuane.com, or look at my website, I've got a stress and alertness questionnaire on there, which shows them their levels of stress, which is always helpful. So they can email me, contact me through my website, follow my posts on LinkedIn, or that's it. My phone number's on the website as well. So I'm always here, and I'm always happy to have a chat with someone. I also work with teams, especially now with remote working, hybrid working, because feelings of isolation and being excluded are very strong. And these, again, are unwanted, unhelpful, depleting emotions that drain us of our energy. So, yes, and I look forward to hearing from anyone, even if it's just for a chat. I'm always willing and ready to help.
Very good. Well, guys, thank you very much, Paula, and absolutely, guys, go and connect with her. One other thing that you want everyone to be aware of is that you can come and join us in the Make It Happen community on Facebook. So if you're on Facebook, come and join us there. There's lots of content being shared and a great community for you to get around other like-minded people and share your challenges and share what's going on, and be able to get help and support in that way as well. It's a free group that you can come and join. Paula, thanks again. For everyone that's been listening, until next time, make it happen.
Pleasure. Bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Make It Happen with Will Polston podcast. Make sure you join Will's free Facebook group, the Make It Happen community. Please support the show by subscribing on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, SoundCloud, or Google Play. Share this episode with at least one friend you think would benefit from it, and give Will a 5-star review wherever you download your podcasts. Until next time, make it happen.